Hello and welcome to Biology Career Insights, the podcast where we talk with the experts from the field of biology to gain valuable insights into the careers and explore ways to navigate the job market in this ever-evolving field. I'm your host, Dr. Manish Kumar. Our guest for this episode is Professor Shahid Jameel. Professor Jameel is a renowned virologist and academic currently serving as the Sultan Qaboos bin Said Fellow at the Oxford Center for Islamic Studies and Research Fellow at Green Templeton College, University of Oxford. He leads the center's project on STEMs, which is also called as Science, Technology and Environment in Muslim Societies. Previously, Professor Jameel was the director for the Trivedi School of Biosciences at Ashoka University and headed the scientific advisory group for the Indian SARS-CoV-2 Genomics Consortia in India. He also served as the CEO of the Wellcome Trust DBT India Alliance. Known for his groundbreaking research on the Hepatitis E virus and significant contributions to the field of virology, Professor Jameel has been honored with numerous awards, including the prestigious Santishwar Bhatnagar Prize for Science and Technology. Professor Jameel's illustrious career includes fellowships with the National Academy of Sciences, India, the Indian Academy of Sciences, and the Indian National Science Academy. His research has greatly advanced for our understanding of viral structures and their implications for disease prevention and treatment. Today on the BCI podcast, we delve into Professor Jameel's remarkable journey, his contributions to virology, and his insights on the future of public health and scientific research. Thank you so much for accepting our invite and a warm welcome to the BCI podcast, Professor Jameel.
Thank you very much, Manish. Thank you for inviting me.
Amazing. So we delve right away. So to start with, Professor Jameel, less people know about your childhood. So tell us about your childhood days and your early inspiration of what made you pursue science in future.
Well, Manish, I grew up in a family of academics. Both my parents, my father and my mother, were scientists.
Wow.
Biochemists, to be more precise. The earlier generation was also in science. So my paternal grandfather was a doctor, and my maternal grandfather was a professor of Arabic and Islamic Studies. In fact, he did his PhD from Berlin in the 1930s. That's closer to where you are.
Yes, absolutely.
So academics and science sort of came naturally. Early on, I was quite fascinated visiting my father's laboratory and see him conduct experiments, see him and his students conduct experiments. And, I guess somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought I will become like them. So, yeah, that's early childhood.
And where was this, Professor Jameel? Like, which part of India was this?
So, both my parents were at Aligarh, at the Aligarh Muslim University. My father started the Department of Biochemistry there, and he was the first chairman of the department, and also the first dean of the Faculty of Life Sciences. And my mother used to teach medical students. So,
wow,
they were both there. Yeah.
And which school did you went? So your whole kind of childhood and your you pursued your bachelor's and master's in Aligarh itself, or you moved to different?
No, so I did my schooling in Aligarh. I went to a Catholic missionary school, which was also a new school when I had entered. So I was actually in the fourth batch of students that went through higher secondary. Higher secondary in those days was 11 years of school. It was neither 10 nor 12, so we were the generation in between. High school for me was really all about friends and cricket. I was serious in my studies, and more importantly, I was regular in my studies, but I was not a bookworm. And I also spent a lot of time on sports and other activities like theater and all that. I did well in school, and somehow got selected for this National Science Talent as a National Science Talent Scholar.
Yeah, this
When I was NSTS, yes, as I was coming out of high school. So that really gave me the idea that, maybe I should stick to science. And so I did my BSc in chemistry at AMU. My first year of BSc was as a pre-medical student. I could have gone into medicine.
Mhm.
I didn't. I didn't even take the medicine entrance test. Looking back, I think that was a mistake. I could have done medicine. I should have done medicine because it would have maybe given a different view to the kind of work that I did later. But nevertheless, you make mistakes and you move on. So, and one of the reasons, I guess, for that was that at that time, the National Science Talent program was only in basic sciences. You lose being part of that, so-called elite group of young people in the country if you went into isomedicine or engineering. So I guess that was one reason. Nevertheless, um, I wanted to do biochemistry. So as I was finishing my BSc, in which I did quite well, uh, I had the option of doing my master's in biochemistry or my master's in chemistry. And I had admission to various programs in MSc biochemistry. I did not want to go to Aligarh for my master's in biochemistry for the simple reason that my father was the chair of the department. Uh, and he advised me to go to IIT Kanpur for my MSc in chemistry. And I remember his advice. He said that if you know chemistry well, biochemistry will come easy to you. And I took that advice and went to IIT Kanpur, which was a fantastic department of chemistry. It also, I also came in touch with some really bright people of my age who were there, my batchmates, developed these long-standing friendships. And as I was coming out of my MSc, like MSc students at IIT Kanpur or any IIT at that time, tried to go overseas to pursue a PhD. So I applied to US universities and I got a full scholarship at Washington State to do my PhD. They gave me a very early offer and a very good offer, which even included my airfare to get there. So I couldn't refuse it. So I did my biochemistry PhD at Washington State. I did enzymology, protein chemistry. And honestly, till that time, I'd never done a formal biochemistry course. I had biochemistry books at home. So I would go through those, but never did a formal course. I learned all my biochemistry as a teaching assistant in biochemistry, which is quite ironic during PhD, and also through the coursework. And interestingly, I worked as a note taker. A note taker used to be someone who would sit in a class below their current standing. So I was a graduate student, and I would sit in an undergraduate class, take notes, type the notes, and sell it to the student union, which then sold it to students. And they paid quite handsomely. I mean, $20 an hour.
Wow, that's
in the early 80s was a lot of money.
absolutely. I didn't even know that kind of job existed. I didn't.
Yes, it was amazing. I got a lot of undergraduate biochemistry by sitting in that class. So I was learning and I was getting paid for it. So that was great. So also during my PhD, there was a lot of independent learning during PhD Of course, the coursework brought me at par with people who had studied biochemistry formally. Uh, but, my supervisor was very supportive, but he was also very busy because he was the department chair. And, as a result, I had to figure out a lot of things on my own. So in retrospect, I think that was good. That was great. I mean, I learned a lot through this independent exercise. So yeah, that's really my journey all the way from my school to my PhD.
Wow. And, I will ask this question because, you did your PhD in protein science and enzymatology. So, of course, the natural question arises, when was it that you felt in love with the virus? Of course, I understand it has to do a lot with viruses and stuff. But before that, what puzzled me is that you said you regretted not doing medicine. And I would like to, a successful scientist like you, why does he has that kind of a regret? Please enlighten us on that.
Well, I mean, in retrospect, as you see your career develop and your interests develop, there are times you feel that perhaps you made the wrong decision at a critical point. And I do feel that I had the ability to have gone into medicine. But then how much of, this basic science grounding I would have had, I don't know. So I would have certainly gained more clinical insights into the kind of work that I did later. So that's why I say that. So, I finished my PhD in 1984, and that was the time when molecular biology was becoming popular. It was the first decade of the development of, molecular biology tools. Remember, the first gene was cloned maybe around the mid-1970s. Insulin was cloned, and, the first virus sequences became available in the late 70s, early 80s. So I wanted to learn molecular biology. I'd learned quite a bit of protein chemistry in my PhD. And I wanted to sort of expand my toolbox and wanted to learn molecular biology. But I was quite clear that I don't want to go and just learn molecular biology, but also work on a system that works with a disease or something. So as I was exploring postdoc opportunities, finally I had two postdoc offers. One was from a well-established big immunology lab that was studying autoimmunity in various forms. And a new lab with a fresh assistant professor who was studying hepatitis B virus. And I decided to choose the latter. I did not go for the comfort of a big lab. I went to the small lab, and my reasoning was very simple, that if I'm coming to learn a new area of work, I should learn directly from someone who's done it instead from a senior postdoc in the lab. So that was my line of thinking. And I think in retrospect, that was the right decision. I had a fairly short postdoc, 3 years, but I published quite well in those 3 years. Not because of my ability, maybe partly because of my ability, but mostly because my supervisor, my postdoc supervisor, still did not have tenure, and he was working very hard to get a tenure.
Got it.
So we worked together. I was his first postdoc, essentially. And that rubbed off on me also. So in 3 years, I had like 4 papers, 2 PNAs, 2 Journal of Virology papers.
Fantastic,
And I got a faculty position based on that in the same same university. I was at the University of Colorado School of Medicine. I was asked to set up a molecular biology lab in the Department of Medicine to study, interleukins. So I started doing that. I had my green card. I had faculty position. I was on my way. But destiny had other plans, of course. And I got a very nice offer from India, from this new institute that was being set up in Delhi. I always wanted to come back to India. I always wanted to be close to my parents because I knew that at someday they will age and they will need me. So here I was, 1 year into my new faculty position in the US, having this offer, and my wife and I decided we have to go back. If we don't go back now, we'll never go back. Our daughter was 3 years old. She could adjust to any surrounding. So we made the move. I was 31 at that time, and getting an opportunity to form a new virology group at a new institute and lead it was too good an offer to miss. So we came back to India.
Wow. So that's amazing that you said this, because for many people I see, and also including myself, that move, every one of us has that heart in India, and, we all have aging parents. But that move is not that easy. So it is courageous because, there, whatever you have in the US is a bird in your hand, right? But there you kind of actually going to the unknown. So ICGB could be a very good institute, but it could also be a very big challenge because you are like, you are going to a new institute. So how hard that decision was for you? And was it also partly because of your wife cooperated and she wanted to move back, or was it like totally based on your choice?
No, it was a collective decision. I think she was very supportive, and I could not have taken the decision that easily if she was not supportive. I mean, yes, the decision is hard, but I think it's also something for which you need to mentally prepare yourself. If you're not mentally prepared and you come back to India and expect everything to work as it worked in the West, at the same speed as it worked in the West, you're going to get frustrated very quickly.
Absolutely.
And remember, I'm talking about the late 1980s. Things were not as developed as they are now. There were different sorts of challenges than there are other challenges now. So I guess mental preparation is very important for something like this. And you don't have to burn your bridges, you don't have to burn your boats, but you have to be, mentally prepared that you're going to a new place, you're going to set it up, and you're going to make it work. When I came to ICGB, we did not have labs. I mean, we had rooms that we knew will turn into labs. There were bare benches. There were no chairs to sit on. So, we essentially built the place. But there's a different excitement in building that. Fortunately, I had a lot of support at ICGB from the leadership. We had very supportive colleagues. Funding, thankfully, was not a problem at that time. So all that came together and helped us build a very nice place. And I still find it very interesting that I was able to publish my first paper from ICGB within 1 year of getting there.
Wow. So that's something, because most of the people are struggling with setting up the lab during those years.
Right. Right. So, and that, for that, I think the credit entirely goes to the leadership at ICGB at that time, and the kind of support that they provided to all the young people they hired. There was this feeling that we're going to make it work. We want these people to succeed, and I think that's very important for a young person to have.
Absolutely. And Professor Jamil, just to dig a bit deeper, so the offer came to you, or you actively were looking for positions in India? Because most of my colleagues, or most of people I know, back in US or in Germany, they actively apply, and they kind of also deal with a lot of rejections and a lot of bureaucracy and stuff like that. So how was during those times?
Well, nothing comes to you, at least not in the early age that I was in. Yes, I know that. I was no bad Siddiqui that Homi Baba will invite without applying. I was aware of my limitations. Yes, I had applied. ICGB was being set up. I had applied around 1986 while I was still a postdoc. There was an advertisement in either Science or Nature, and I had applied. But then I heard nothing for a whole year.
Yeah, and this is what many go through, and then they are disappointed.
Yeah,
this would be a good.
So I heard nothing for a year, and I even forgot about it, honestly. And by the time in 87, I had started my new faculty job at Colorado. And I get a phone call in the lab, and the person at the other end was the director designate for ICGB Delhi, Professor Krishna Tiwari, who used to be a professor at UC Irvine. And Tiwari Sahab called me and said, well, you had applied for this position and we are appointing you. When can you join?
Wow.
And it was just like that. First I thought it was a joke. and then when he explained a little bit about it, I said, yes, I'm very much interested. I've just started a new faculty position. I can't just pack up and leave. I owe some responsibility here. So I will join in after I finish 1 year here. And he said, fine. And I still remember he said, do you have any questions? And, it was so sudden. I had no questions. And the only stupid question that I asked him was, do you have a 5-day week or a 6-day week? And he said,
that as a scientist is not taken positively these days, right? Like
exactly. And he said, how does it matter? You're going to be working 7 days a week anyway. So that's it. I mean, and so on the phone, I said, yes, I will come, but I'll come after I finish 1 year here. So I left US in August of 88 and joined ICGB from 1st September 88.
Wow.
That's how it came about.
Fantastic.
I did not have a contract when I went to India.
Wow. So, but that was the trust, the level of trust you had in the system.
Yeah. So I asked him to send me a contract. He said, you'll get a contract when you get here.
Wow. Now, that's very courageous, Professor Jameel, because these days people, even when they see like a 2-year contract or a 5-year contract, they have so many questions because, things they have, heard some good stories, but they also hear some bad stories, right? So people become skeptical.
Yeah.
So what would be your advice? Yeah. So how would you advise, or, what is your 2 cents for senior postdocs who are like willing to go back to India? How would they pursue this?
Well, do your research. Today it's a lot easier to find out about a place, about people than it was, 40 years back.
Absolutely.
Do your research. but don't overplan. I think the trouble comes when we start overplanning. Listen to your mind, but also listen to your heart. What is your passion? How do you want to do this? Where do you want to spend, the next part of your life? What is more important to you? Prioritize. And it was important for me to get back to India. So what I didn't tell you is that in between, I had an offer from National University of Singapore. In 86, I had that offer.
While you were in
while I was in US.
Okay, while you were
while I was still a postdoc. National University of Singapore was setting up an institute called Institute for Molecular and Cell Biology, IMCB. And they interviewed me for art. They offered me, they even showed me the blueprints of my lab and everything. Before signing on the dotted line, I decided not to go there because I wanted to get back to India. I didn't want to get back to Singapore. And my thinking was that it would be far easier for me to go back to India from US than from Singapore. And I also didn't want to disrupt my work at that time, so I stayed back in the US. And a year later, this ICGB thing came out. So yeah, sometimes you have to prioritize, what you want to do.
And this was like heart over mind, right? Because in many terms, you would be also swayed away. Like many people also kind of see, where it is more lucrative, and then they kind of choose that path, right? So it was...
Yeah, so the mind had thought through it, but then I listened to my heart.
Perfect. Amazing. So again, yeah. So I mean, we all know about your journey in ICGB and stuff like that. Tell us some story about winning the Santiswar Bhatnagar Prize, because that's like the Indian Nobel Prize, right? So how did that happen?
It was never planned. And I was myself very surprised that it happened. I really focused on my work at ICGB. And honestly, I mean, people may not believe me, but I keep telling I used to tell my students that, these recognitions will come. They are a professional hazard. It will happen.
Professional hazard?
Yeah, they will. And they do tend to distract you quite a bit from the work that you do. I mean, it's good. The recognition is great. I mean, it feels really good. I'm not being ungrateful here. But there is no way you can plan these things.
Absolutely.
And if you start planning these things, you're more likely to be disappointed than otherwise. So my advice to people always has been, do good work. Focus on your work.
And the rest perhaps...
The rest will come or not come. How does it matter? As long as you are satisfied that you are doing your work well, you are publishing good work. And I especially want to add that publishing good work doesn't mean publishing in high impact factor journals. And these days, publishing in the big journals takes a big chunk of your life out of you. Fortunately, it wasn't like that when I was a PhD student or postdoc or even an early career researcher. So just do good work, focus on good work, and as early in your career, try to grow vertically and not horizontally. Don't try to do too many things. Focus on a small set of problems, drill down, and publish repeatedly in the same field. That's what you will be known for.
Wow.
So those are things. So to answer your question, I never planned it.
Mm-hmm.
It just happened that I had a body of work that people who were in the selection committee recognized. Of course, I applied for it. I was nominated for it. I mean, nomination simply means applying.
Absolutely.
But, I had approached Professor Ramalingaswamy, who I knew from his hepatitis work and who was very supportive in my work at ICGB early on. I approached him if he would nominate me, and he readily agreed to nominate me. Very grateful to him for that. And yeah, it happened. So I didn't get it in the first year that I had applied. I got it, I think, in the second year or maybe even the third year that I had applied. So yeah, it just happened.
Amazing. Now, before I ask about your, other career progressions, other highlights of your journey, tell us about the differences in, the nature of the PhD students that you encountered in US versus India. And what are these differences?
Well, I think the difference is the philosophy. I mean, when somebody in US comes to do a PhD, they really want to be there to do a PhD. It's not a default option for them. It is a thought-through option for them.
Absolutely.
In India, unfortunately, a lot of people do PhD because there's nothing else for them to do. You've done your BSc, you've done well. Your family says, no, go do MSc. Okay, you've done MSc, then what? You're a decent student, you get a fellowship, you go do a PhD.
It's a by default option rather than a...
Yeah, it's a by default option. I mean, you don't get time to think through your career. I was like that too. I mean, I did my BSc, I did well. I did my MSc, I did well. I got a scholarship to go to US to do a PhD. I went and did that. But students in the US who come to do a PhD, US students, they were there because they wanted to be there. They could have gone on to become a plumber or an electrician and would have earned more money than a PhD.
Yeah, this is a big joke about academia, and this we will dig deeper because it's also about the monetary compensations. Because PhD students are paid so less that it has to be a passionate choice, because only that passion can compensate for the lack of the remuneration, right? So,
by the way, PhD students were not paid very much in the US also at that time.
Absolutely. No, this is what I'm saying. That's why you see that, people in US are rather driven by their passion, which compensates for the lack of the money that earned during PhD, right?
I'll tell you a story which I think your listeners would enjoy very much. I got married when I was in my third year of PhD. So halfway through the PhD, after I had cleared my prelims and all, we got married. And being a married student in the US with a spouse who's not working is very challenging. It used to be very challenging. I'm sure it is now as well. Often we would find that at the end of the month, if there were like $5 left in our bank account, that was a good nap. No, seriously. I mean, it was very challenging. And I remember this one incident where there was a movie on campus, and I still remember the name of the movie. It was a musical called Jesus Christ Superstar. It was like a cult movie in those days. So we wanted to go see this movie, and we didn't have $2 to pay for the movie. $1 was the ticket for two of us, $2. So I had this habit of just putting whatever pennies I had in my pocket into a jar. So I took 200 pennies to see the movie. Wow. And the girl at the counter said, "You expect me to count this?" I said, "No, I've counted it." She said, "Okay, fine." So, yeah, I mean, but, those experiences shape you. So, yeah.
No, this is also inspirational because, sometimes we value money so much, but it's like, I mean, of course, money is a great tool, it can do wonders, but sometimes, I mean, passion is more important than the money, right? So,
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
so Professor Jameel, you stayed at ICGB for long, and then you went on to become the CEO of the Wellcome Trust India Alliance. So tell us more about this, this role and how did it happen?
Yeah. So I stayed at ICGB for 25 years, from 1988 till 2013. So it was, I think, late in 2012 that I applied for this position of CEO of Welcome DBT India Alliance. This organization started in 2008, but before that, Wellcome Trust used to give international senior research fellowships to about, anywhere from about 2 to 5 Indian scientists, biomedical scientists, or life scientists every year. And that program started in 1999. So I was the recipient of Wellcome Trust International Senior Fellowship in 2001 for the research that I was doing at ICGB. So it was a 5-year fellowship, and it was a great fellowship, wonderful. And I came to learn so much about research management through that fellowship. One incident I'll tell you, through that fellowship, I got the first confocal microscope that came to ICGB. And the instrument was worth 88 lakhs in 2001. Within 6 months of the instrument getting there, we had a fire in ICGB on the floor below where the instrument was kept. Our instrument was safe, but the smoke destroyed its optics. And so here I was in a dilemma, new project, 88 lakh machine destroyed. What do you do? So I simply wrote an email to my program officer at Wellcome Trust saying this had happened. I got a mail from her in a few days saying, go ahead and buy a new microscope. We'll send you the extra money.
That's fantastic. That's very generous of them, right? Like, this is amazing.
That was amazing. I mean, they did not want my director to certify that this had already happened. And that told me that, they selected me, so they trust me.
Absolutely.
And, this is the kind of organization that one needs here. So after very successful, almost 10 years of the International Senior Research Fellowship Program, Wellcome Trust decided to partnership DBT to set up a new program in India. And the credit for it goes entirely to Dr. M.K. Bhan, who was the secretary of DBT at that time, who discussed it with Mark Walford, who was director of Wellcome Trust at that time, and said, we will co-fund the program. There is another story behind it. Some people say that this discussion actually took place in a bar. And since both were drunk, they didn't know what they were doing. But that was nevertheless, this happened. So 2008, the program was launched. Anuradha Lohia was the first CEO. And Anuradha really set up a very nice program. I was aware of that. I was involved with it. So around 2012, this position opened up because Anuradha was leaving. So I thought I should apply for it. And I'll also tell you the reasons why I wanted to apply for it. Well, one, of course, was that I was a Wellcome Senior Fellow. So I did want to get involved with it more seriously. But also that mentoring and supporting younger scientists was always of interest to me. And I thought that if I get this job, then it would give me a much bigger platform to be able to do that and make a difference.
Absolutely.
But also, I was very honest with myself. And by that time, I felt that the problems that I was working on were good. I was still getting grants. I was still having a lab, but I didn't think I was doing as well as I was doing earlier, and I didn't have a very good plan for the next 10 years. So I was honest with myself and said, well, there is another option coming up. Why not try it?
Absolutely.
So I applied for it, and they selected me. So I spent the next almost 8 years at India Alliance. And again, I was very fortunate to be supported by a great team and both funders, Department of Biotechnology and the Wellcome Trust. Really, really nice support. And we together built a really very nice program on the foundations that Anuradha had already set up.
No, and you did some excellent job there, because I thought, like, and I actually encountered that a lot of people were pursuing like good academics abroad. They moved because of this.
Yes. And again, the ethos there was, once you have selected someone, go out of your way to support that person.
Trust them.
Make sure that they succeed. So this was an unwritten rule in the organization that the fellow reigns supreme. We are there for the fellows. They are not there because of us.
Wow.
It was a very clear directive to the team that listen to them, see what they feel, talk to them.
Absolutely. I think one important thing that you said is that you have always tried to be very honest with yourself. And this is sometimes that we try to hear others, we want to copy others, but we are not authentic to our own self. So how did you kind of develop those qualities, to being honest? So whenever you wanted to make a move, you went on to move and not just pursued a normal copy-paste path. So tell us something about that.
Well, every individual is different. What works for me will not necessarily work for anyone else. Our behavior, our attitude is a collection of many things, many experiences. So I guess that's how I grew up. That's how I am. It's important to be honest with yourself. A lot of people will tell you a lot of things. Some will flatter you, some will criticize you. Take that in stride. But again, you are the one who know yourself the best.
Absolutely.
Be honest with yourself. I think that's important.
And this is, quite reflective in your career journey, because, after the stint at Wellcome Trust, then again, you kind of moved to Ashoka University, which is again, a very kind of a pioneer university in itself. It's a private university, but tell us just about the journey of that, from Wellcome Trust to...
Yeah. So Ashoka happened. Ashoka was never planned. Ashoka happened because I had already told my trustees at India Alliance in 2019 that I will leave. And my reason for leaving was that we had negotiated a new agreement between Wellcome Trust and Government of India, which brought more money to India Alliance. Mm-hmm. We could start new things. So it was on solid footing. But this new agreement was going to expire in 2023. End of 2023, 24 financial year. So I declared to my trustees in 2019 that I will leave and you have 1 year to find a replacement. And the reason for my leaving was simply that I didn't see myself being at the organization till the next renewal cycle. Honestly, because I was not learning anything new there anymore. And I also wanted to give my successor enough time to, put in roots and, take the organization to the next step. So that was in 2019. 2020, they did select someone, and I left in 2020. And actually, I was supposed to come to Oxford around that time. But the pandemic happened, and everyone was grounded. So Shashidhara, who was the Dean of Research at Ashoka, called me and said, "Hey, why don't you come and join Ashoka? Ashok Trivedi has given 100 crores to set up a new school of biosciences. We think you have the right mix of academia and management that you have done in the past. Come over and work with us." So I looked at it and, Ashoka seemed like a very good opportunity. I had several conversations with Ashok Trivedi, who is an extremely nice man and an extremely persuasive man. If he wants something, he will not take no for an answer. So both Ashok and Shashi convinced me to get there, and I went there, but I was quite clear to them that I may not be able to stay for more than a year because I've already committed myself to this position at Oxford, and as soon as things ease off, I will move. And Ashoka just happened. Yeah.
No, this is amazing, because I'll come to the pandemic just after this question, but tell us about your current role. What do you do currently?
Yeah, so as you said in your introduction, my primary appointment is at the Oxford Center for Islamic Studies, which is a research institution that is dedicated to the study of Muslim societies, not countries, but societies.
Societies.
So historically, the center has done research on Islamic theology, history, economics, sociology, and they wanted to add science and technology to their portfolio. Due to my work before coming to Oxford, I was also elected a fellow at Green Templeton College here, which is a postgraduate college of the university, whose fellowship is focused largely on health sciences. So I was recruited by the center to set up a program on science and technology in Muslim societies. And, we decided to focus on two key themes. One is climate change and the other is disruptive technologies, and to look at their impact on societies in general, but Muslim societies in particular. So essentially, we're trying to set up a think tank-like structure to look at some of these problems and to understand them. And for the center, I also coordinate the visiting fellowship program. We get around 25 to 30 visiting fellows every year who come for as little as 2 months and as much as a year. I look after that program as well. So, yeah.
So you mentioned something about your, pandemic days. So of course you were working with Ashoka, and then you were also head of the scientific advisory group for the Indian SARS-CoV, right? So,
right.
How do you see the pandemic and, the ongoing debate about COVID? We'll come to, vaccines and stuff, but tell us how did India deal with SARS-CoV? And was it a good strategy, all the things that we did in retrospect?
Well, it was a new disease. When you look back at late 2019 or really early 2020, it was a new disease, the virus for which was spreading very differently from an earlier member of the same family that caused SARS in 2002. And the key difference was that while SARS had only about 8,000 cases and roughly 90 deaths, COVID by now has had about 700 million confirmed cases and over 7 million deaths. Both of these are underestimates. So it was a new disease. We didn't, and it was a very fast-moving disease. And as we know now that it caused a pandemic, so it had to be understood quickly and also stopped at pandemic speed. If I reflect back on those days, and not why just India, everywhere, there was misinformation, there was disinformation, there was pseudo nationalism, and there was the emergence of social media, which was a really big challenge. Everyone thought that they knew everything about this because they had read it on a WhatsApp forward from someone else. So that was a really big challenge. In India, in particular, looking back, I feel that the lack of data in the early days and then the non-availability of good quality data in the public domain became the most serious challenge. It did not allow us to model and predict as well as we were capable of doing. But on the other hand, when India got its act together, India did wonderfully well in producing and manufacturing very large amounts of vaccine. Delivering almost 2.2 billion doses of vaccine within the country. For a country of India's resources, that is a remarkable achievement, I think.
Absolutely, but that is because of the Serum Institute of India, which is again a private private,
yes,
right? So, I mean that is point well taken. But I would like to highlight a bit, and maybe it is a bit political things, and I don't want to go into the politics of it. But seeing because I saw some embassy notifications on how Ayurveda and all this coronil was coming. Baba Ramdev was doing all kind of, as you said, pseudo nationalism, So there were a lot of gimmicks being played, like, banging of your thali and WhatsApp University was very active. And what do you think is the role of scientists in those times? Shouldn't scientists, because I've seen scientists, like real scientists, coming on TV and justifying those acts. So as a virologist, as somebody who is kind of done virus studies, how do you see that, and what you have to say to the people?
Yeah, that was unfortunate. That should not have been done, and there were enough good people in policy making who should have been heard, whose advice should have been taken. Now, I don't know. I was not in that position, so I don't know whether they made their point and they were not heard, or they never made their point. I do believe that people in responsible positions were somehow deficient in advising the political leadership about this. There were instances where people came up with these graphs showing that the pandemic will end by 15th of May 2021, and we all know that COVID actually peaked in India at that time. Now, was it due to bad data that was available to modelers, or was it, as I keep calling it, policy-based evidence making? Political leadership determines a policy, and then you generate evidence to match that policy. So a lot of that happened, and that was most unfortunate. Yes, politics happened everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, so looking at the West, for example, of course, mistakes can happen. And I'm not criticizing, any governments here, but, I mean, killing of that scientific temperament which is very worrying, and it should be kind of also very concerning for scientists, right? So isn't it the duty of, like, I would say it's a fundamental duty of any renowned scientist to come up and be vocal against any bullshit that is happening, in terms of killing the scientific temperament. Like, for example, uh, you know, people using cow urine or people using cow dung, and somehow mixing religion and science together. How do you see that?
No, I mean, religion can be a very potent force in guiding people as well as misguiding people. I have seen how religion can be used to very good effect. For example, in the polio eradication campaign, it was actually religious groups whose help eliminated polio from the country.
Absolutely.
But it was scientists who patiently explained to them why taking a polio vaccine is important, why a polio vaccine will not make their children sterile, why the polio vaccine does not contain products from the pig. All that scientists explained to clergy that then communicated it to communities. And I've seen that quite early, and those are some of the things that I address in the work that I do now. But yes, people are gullible, and people think that science always has all the right answers. Science doesn't. Science provides answers only as good as the tools that are available at that time. There is a lot of uncertainty in science, and it is this certain uncertainty that most people don't understand. So that happened. I mean, WHO is saying wear masks, then they're saying don't wear masks. Should you stand 6 feet apart or should you stand 10 feet apart? So a lot of things happened because we didn't have the right data, we didn't have the right answers. But yes, I think your point is well taken that scientists should have stepped up to the plate and say, well, what is happening is wrong. And some of us did. I mean, we were challenging these things. But there were others who were part of the establishment that unfortunately did not support this independent view. And also, it was unprecedented that about 800 plus scientists in the country signed a letter to the Honorable Prime Minister asking for data to be made available in the public domain. And as the saying goes, if you don't want to do anything, make a committee. So a committee was made, and the committee never accepted any proposal from any scientist to release data. That, I think, hurt India.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Because we did not have good data to work with. There are very capable people, but we didn't have data to work with.
And Professor Jameel, so how did COVID-19 impacted your work or research priorities those times?
Well, by the time COVID came, I was not actively doing research. I had already closed my lab at ICGB by about 2015, having moved to the Welcome DBT Alliance in 2013. So I was no longer in active research, but I did have a background in that sort of research. And, I had experience both in research as well as research management. So INSACOG was a good experience. I mean, it was a mixed experience, but there was a lot of learning. I mean, INSACOG, as you know, was set up by Government of India, Department of Biotechnology and the Ministry of Health coming together at the very end of 2020. To be precise, 30th of December 2020. That, if you recall, was a time when the alpha variant had already been found in south of England. The beta variant had already been found in South Africa. And a new variant was discovered in India, which was called B.1.617. All that had happened by late December. The grouping was set up rightly to look at how the virus is changing in the country. I recall that the first meeting of INSACOG took place on 20th of January 2021. And from there on, we met every single day, online, of course, to set up this whole pipeline of. So there were initially 10 labs in INSACOG. And the idea was to collect samples, transport samples, do the sequencing, get the sequences to labs that would do bioinformatic analysis, and then release this data to Ministry of Health, and then they would upload it on public servers. That was the pipeline. So we were able to do it quite successfully within about 2 to 3 weeks. And samples started flowing, sequencing started happening. There was a lot of cooperation between the labs. There were also challenges with ICMR always trying to play spoil sport in any of this. LCDC was extremely supportive. Ministry of Health was supportive. But ICMR was a world of its own. Anyway, I mean, this happened quite well. And now INSACOG is about 54 labs that are part of it. By the time I left INSACOG, we had 24 labs, but now it has expanded. So yeah, I mean, I was not doing research, but I still understood the problem, and coming from a mixture of research and research management sort of background, and, with the help of some really fantastic colleagues at INSACOG, we were able to do that. So yeah, that's what I was doing full time at that time. Yeah.
And in terms of learnings, so the pandemic taught us a lot of things. Do you think like we are prepared better than currently we were for dealing with, say, a future pandemic maybe?
I think technologically we are better prepared. Whether policy-wise we are better prepared or not, I have my doubts, because a lot of the learning at the policy level seems to have been lost or forgotten. Technologically, yes. To me, the most important learnings that came from COVID, one is the use of genomics in a very big way globally, and in India as well, to track and understand the virus. So by now, if you look at public databases, there are about 17 million SARS-CoV-2 sequences in databases. About 335,000 are from India. So a lot of work has happened and a lot of understanding has gone into this. My second learning from COVID is the fast development and licensing of vaccines and the manufacture of vaccines. First vaccines became available within a year of identifying the virus.
Which was amazing. I mean,
which was amazing. Yes. But, a lot of people also kept saying, these are unsafe, these are unsafe, these are unsafe, without really much evidence. The only evidence was that earlier vaccines used to take 10 years to make. Now, how can you make a vaccine in 1 year? But that's no argument, really. Because now, when the next one comes, you will ask for a vaccine in 3 months. And there really is a program. I mean, CEPI and the Gates and, these people are working on a 100-day vaccine plan. That 100 days from the time a new pathogen is identified, you should have a vaccine for it. So that's how technology has developed. I mean, several new vaccine technologies became available. RNA vaccines, viral vector vaccines, and we are still debating whether these are safe or unsafe. I mean, you've seen the recent scare about the AstraZeneca vaccine or the RNA vaccine.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, the last thing I was going to say that really COVID became the first pandemic to have been stopped with a vaccine. It has never happened in human history.
Absolutely.
So that's such a positive thing to have come out of it.
And this is so interesting, because now you deal with you deal with say Muslim societies and stuff like that, where, like, I would say it is not just with Muslim societies, but many other, say, so-called religious societies, that vaccines is like not taken positively. They have that fear mongering, right? So what you have to say to them, or in general, like, anti-vaxxers as whole, what you have to say for them?
Well, anti-vaxxers happen because people who know and understand the value of vaccines don't communicate this in a language that most people could understand.
Absolutely. Very valid.
Scientists have this tendency of sitting in their ivory towers and thinking that we do such fantastic work that only we understand it. That's the wrong approach. You may have the best technology, you may have the best vaccine, you may have the best drug, you may have the best automobile, but if nobody buys it, if nobody uses it, it means nothing.
Absolutely.
So we need to, communicate this properly. Just in 1 year of the COVID vaccines, it is estimated to have saved 14 to 20 million lives.
Wow.
This is not communicated properly. And, as I said earlier, faith, religion can be a very positive force. 85% people in the world believe in one religion, one faith or the other. So you cannot simply put faith aside and tell people, here is the technology, you must use it because I'm telling you so. He'll turn around and say, well, my faith says, go take a hike. So, this dialogue, there is this thinking that science and religion should always be opposite of each other. They're not. One can enable the other.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really what I'm driven by these days, to try and understand and to bring the importance of science to people who follow one or the other religious faiths. I mean, they can go together. They don't have to be opposite of each other.
Awesome. Professor Jameel, I did not ask about, the major challenges that you faced, and I'm sure there are plenty of challenges that you have faced through this long journey. So could you highlight some of the biggest challenges you faced and how did you deal with them?
Well, there are challenges at every stage that everyone faces. And they come in the form of choices. Should you do this course or that course? Should you pursue this research or that? Should you take up a job in this institution or that? We all have these choices to make. And the way I have dealt with these choices is to look at it objectively, plan it in my head, but not to overplan. To sometimes also listen to your heart or your gut, you may, whatever you may call it. But do ask yourself what drives your passion. This is what I have followed. Yes, I've had challenges. Everyone has had challenges. When I had to, do my MSc, I had a challenge. I had a choice where to go. When I had to do my PhD, I had a choice. I had to figure it out. For a postdoc, I had to figure it out, And I'm not unique in that. Everyone is. Everyone faces these challenges, and I face those challenges too. But I truly think that the challenges that I faced during COVID is something that provided a lot of learning. It provided a lot of learning in the goodness of people and also in the selfishness of people. In adopting science, in rejecting science. And some of that I will always carry with me. I will never forget 21st of April 2021. In one day, I lost 6 people I knew to COVID. That was, I mean, if something affected me emotionally very deeply, it was that. But yes, you move on. But moving on doesn't mean that you forget it. Moving on means that you've accepted it. You have learned something from it. And most importantly, you have learned not to make that same mistake again. If you've done that, then be at peace with yourself.
And on the positive side, I mean, of course, we all know about your career highlights, but what is that one thing that you are very proud of achieving? And how do you reflect back to it?
I think I'm very proud that whenever there was a decision to be made, whether it was in my own life or whether it was sitting in a committee, I was objective about it. I did not let good or bad personal relationships come in the way. I looked at it objectively, and I did not let my emotions take charge. So, in the bigger scheme of things, I think that's important.
Wow, fantastic! And now to the most interesting and most interesting question of this podcast. What would be your advice to aspiring biotechnologist or virologist? What do you have to say to them?
Well, if that is your passion, follow it. Prepare yourself for it, academically, mentally. Read a lot. And read not just in your area of work, but read outside of your area of work. Your best ideas usually come from outside your own field. So read quite a bit. And now it's very easy to be able to do that. In fact, there is information overload now. But yeah, I mean,
it's again, cause of also a lot of distraction.
So. Yes, it is. It is. So be selective. Of course, you have to be selective. But I would say, see if that is your passion. Don't do it because I did it and I was successful at it. You run your own life. You know yourself better. So again, coming back to it, be honest with yourself. Don't do it because somebody else did it.
Awesome. So, Professor Jameel, I know that, it has been long and we have been talking. So thank you so much for sharing your insights and experiences with us. It has been a pleasure having you on this podcast. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manish. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And to the audience, thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned for more fascinating discussions with experts from the field of biology. Until next time, signing off. See you again. Bye. Bye, Professor Jameel. Bye.
Bye, Manish.